If this breaks up, I will restart it. And if anything happens to my phone or the internet, then I will do what I need to do to restart it. So hello to all of you. I was led of the Spirit of God to do this. I'm going to be probably more transparent than I have ever been on Periscope. So I am not going to bash or do any of that stuff, but I'm going to share some critical insights on this issue. The song that is playing is All Nations Atlanta, which is the Isaiah song. It is my favorite in this. So I'm going to obey God, and even against my discomfort, I don't want to do this. But I'm sure my honesty is going to heal a pastor somewhere. So please pray for me. The Lord has given me and is teaching me a lot about influence and how the rules change at every degree and every range of influence. So I'm learning the song and the dance between what national issues to try to do something about and which ones are not my problem. And it's a very interesting thing to learn, and I'm doing my best to manage that well. All right, so I'm going to say to you some things that will help you pray for your pastor. And I'm going to say to you some things that your pastor wants to say and cannot. And I'm going to put my neck out there because people already crucify me. So I'm kind of used to that. But somebody's got to be able to say something and do something. Okay, so for starters, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some history, some random facts about me. I'm going to give you some truth about me, and then I'll pivot you toward this issue of pastoral discouragement and burnout. It is very real. Okay, from the top. My name is Matthew Stevenson III. I do have 3 earned degrees. I started the All Nations Worship Assembly in 2003, and I was married in 2005. If my wife sees that and I'm wrong, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. I pastored for a year as a single man. I did okay without her, but I do amazing with her. Let me see, what else? Oh yeah, I was not ever involved in any sports. I was never involved in anything athletic, and the truth is my siblings all are. My father was, but the reason I was not athletic is because I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And from the age of probably 13 to maybe 16, I was in and out, Hart Ramsey, hey bro, I was in and out of the hospital because the lining of my stomach looked like Swiss cheese. I had several holes in my stomach, and it was an incurable disease. They've made a lot of strides with that as of lately, but when I was first diagnosed, there were no cures. So I was on prednisone and Pentasa, and the only thing I was comfortable with doing on those meds was eating. So I avoided all physical activity. After I was married, I became athletic as a virtue of trying to heal. And my healing was a spiritual one. And so once I got my heart right, my body aligned. And yeah, so that's it. For those of you that don't know, or I'm just going to put this out there, I have the awesome privilege of pastoring the All Nations Worship Assembly of Chicago. We are at a provable 5,000 members. We're over 5,000 members, and we are one church in 7 locations. Okay, so we have a location in Memphis, in Baltimore, in Atlanta, in Louisville, in San Bernardino, in Huntsville, Alabama. I think I said all of them. And I am presently, as of today, at the beginning phase of migration from being a senior pastor and a church planter in that way. So it's taking me through some changes. I have intentions on planting lots more. I am also the very privileged overseer of the All Nations Network. So there are many more churches that I oversee that are not necessarily All Nations Worship Assembly campuses. I oversee a network of churches who I love so dearly. I am actually going to talk to them tonight. I have the point of this Periscope is because I put together a training on self-care for my pastors, and I'm talking to them tonight. But I didn't want to seem selfish by only throwing my energy to those I'm responsible for and not necessarily giving any help or insight or thoughts to people I'm not responsible for. I'm not that type of person. So that is why I'm doing that. So I oversee them churches. My wife and I have been married 13 years. I have 3 natural children. I have an 11-year-old. I have a 10-year-old. I have a 5-year-old. I have raised 2 that are not mine. So when I say not mine, meaning that I'm not their paternal dads, but I raised a boy who had a son, and I raised a girl from the time they were in their early 20s. And when I say raise, I don't mean in a generic black people, I change your diapers, raise. Sophia Ruffin, good to see you. I mean houses, cars, food, college raise. One of the girls that I've raised is in her 3rd degree that and currently lives with us. So my wife and I, since we've been married, we have always had somebody else that we were raising, which is where I got my desire to adopt from. So yeah, my hope is that I will have 10 kids one day, and my wife is not having any more, but we want to adopt 7 in addition to the 3 that we have. I cook. I am born and raised from Chicago, church background, never really backslid, had a couple of minor departures and deviations, if you will, from the faith. But born and raised in the church, a Baptist church. We were not spirit-filled, did not believe in the baptism of the Holy Ghost. All of that stuff happened to me accidentally. But I cook, and I was born and raised in Chicago, and I love my city. That's right. I was born in Inglewood, actually. So that is why I'm ghetto. I consider myself extremely intelligent. I philosophize. I love reading. I love spelling. I made a double in the 6th grade. From the 5th grade to the 7th grade, my mother would not allow it. But in the 6th grade, I scored college 11th grade reading scores, and so I was offered a double in the Chicago public school system. My mother and I moved when I was younger to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We lived 207 Fredna Lane. We went from there around the New Orleans area, and then we came back home to Chicago. My father was a soldier all of his life. I have 3 siblings that I'm aware of. All right, my wife and I on paper have 7 companies, and we're working on a lot more. We are responsible for 40 salaries. 30 of them are full-time. So those are 40 families, 40 stories, 40 estates that we are responsible for, and 30 of them are full-time that work on our vision and what we do and who we are. I am random ones, and this is the close of this segment. I love to shoot things, hunting, guns. I love motorcycles. I love to ride on them. I told y'all I'm ghetto already, and I'm educated. I love history and law. If I was not pastoring, I would be a judge. My dream career was to be a judge. And I guess theoretically, spiritually, I am one. But naturally, I wanted to be a judge. I can't swim. I pretend like I can, but I cannot swim. If I am ever around anything that you do or anything that we're around water, I'm going to stay where it's safe. I tried to be fancy a couple of weeks ago on a beach on an escape trip and almost drowned. So yeah, there you have that. I love horses. I absolutely love horseback riding. Okay. I like to get on the back of horses and run fast or shoot Bambi. Judge me if you want. That's what I do. I have been preaching since the year 1999. I was licensed and initially ordained by my great-great-grandfather. And all of us was in the same exact church. And the only reason I'm talking to you about all of this is because it's going to help you understand my perspectives and my insights on my journey as a pastor. I started preaching in 99, and I was filled with the Holy Ghost in 1997. If this is skipping, then just watch the replay and get the same stuff. So that is in a nutshell, in summation, who I am. And the reason I wanted to start that way before I go into the downsides of what we do and what I've experienced in my 14 years of pastoring is I'm proving that you don't know me. You follow me, you've heard of me or not. Maybe you have bought one of my books. I published 8 of them. One of them is on National Publish. You may be one of the 80,000 people that follow me on Instagram, or one of the more than 100,000 people that follow me on Facebook, but you don't know me. You follow me. You've heard of me or not. And your pastor feels the same exact way. We very often are people that are assumed because of what we show you. And we are interacted with based upon what we show you. So you don't know me. And the unfortunate thing about that is that we live in a culture that really thinks that if they are acquainted with the brand of whoever you are, that they know you. So they give you definitions and they give you expectations. You know, they send you emails and they send you direct messages about their emergencies and all of that, and they demand you to respond, and they want you to be whatever they want you to be. So I faced a lot these last 14 years, and I'm going to say this: I'm fine. I have a pretty good grid on when I'm not in a good headspace, and I'm fine. I, without apology, sabbatical every year. And I'm getting ready for my season of rest now. And the honest truth is I can't wait. I need to really rethink vision and rethink strategy and reapproach, just to regroup. Everybody needs to do it. And I've been sabbaticaling, if I could say it that way, probably for the last 9 years. I just disappear, okay? And I'm getting ready to do it now without apology. But I'll explain why it's even difficult for pastors to sabbatical or to take a Sabbath, because they have to worry about who's going to be loyal around them and who's going to be consistent to the house and who's going to not show up and not do their job and pay their tithes and all that stuff. So that's all I want to say, is that you don't really know me. And it is unfair for your pastor, for me, or for another leader to be to you what you've heard through somebody else's experiences with them. So I'm fine. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not on drugs. I don't molest people. I'm married to my wife. I love my kids. I'm fine. I'm exhausted, but I'm fine. I've had some very challenging experiences over the last 14 years. And I love my job. I absolutely love my job. I would not change it. But the truth is that I have a love-hate relationship with what God has called me to do. There are certain aspects of my calling that I love. And if I'm being honest and starting with my honesty, there's certain aspects of my calling that I hate. And I'm just going to talk through some of that for you. Tonight, I'll be training my pastors in this, but I just want to encourage you if you don't submit to what we do and who we are. I've learned a lot in the last 14 years, and a part of what I have done, and I'm certain that you have done, is this. And before I go into this, I don't want to, this is not a solicitation for praise. I don't need any of that. This is not a solicitation for gifts. I don't need any of that. I'm just trying to show the type of lives we've signed up for. I have called this life the unfair life. It is definitely the unfair life. We live unfair lives. And it doesn't mean that we do everything right. I have not done everything right. But there are people who can't touch my preaching, and they can't touch the prophetic, so they pick on my personality and what they don't appreciate, what they don't prefer about my personality. And the challenge with that is that I definitely am not the typical pastor. I don't fit the definition or the expectations of all of that, and I'm never going to ever try to. But it is a stigma of framework of that. But some consistent experiences that every pastor goes through. So for perspective, over the last 10 years, I've personally I've paid for 4 weddings. I've personally paid for 6 funerals. 4 of the funerals that I paid for, I did not know them. One of them was a pastor, and the Lord moved me to take care of that. I have ordained, this is going to make a lot of sense to you in the next several moments. Man, I'm trying not to cry. I've ordained 140 people. So that's elders and prophets and apostles and all of that stuff. And these are some things that we have to face and things that we go through. So day before yesterday, when we learned about the guy that killed himself, it hit me in a real crazy place. And Sunday night, before I found out what was happening, Sunday night I was in prayer, and with our church we gathered together to pray, and the Lord convicted me during the prayer meeting about my rest, and He told me, you need to rest, and He was dealing with me with a revelation of rest. So I was there. When I got home, I got a text message from a guy who lived with me, telling me that, he loved me and all this stuff. And I didn't know what it was about. I'm like, this is random. What you texting me for, Negro? And then I got the flyer about the pastor in California that killed himself. And it shook me so bad, because I know that it's difficult for all pastors to learn how to take care of themselves. And we don't know that. It's just that you have to relearn those principles at every level of your influence. So, for example, if you learn how to take care of yourself at 50 people, you have to learn how to take care of yourself differently at 1,000 people. And then if you learn how to take care of yourself at 1,000 people, you have to learn how to take care of yourself at 5,000. So it's different. So it's not that, even for me, it's not that I don't know how. It's just that I have to relearn it at every level of influence. But there was a couple of things in my journey that I was not prepared for. And one of them was racism. I was not completely prepared for that. And the potential traumatic effects of success. Success, whether you know this or not, has social consequences. And it can potentially traumatize you. I'm not going to call any names, but there's several people that we all know in pop culture, in church culture that are being traumatized by their success. I have had a lot of people to come around me and support me and to walk with me, but I didn't take a class on how to handle influence or success and all of that stuff. So there was a couple of things I was not prepared for. So I wasn't prepared for racism. I was not prepared for opportunism, the culture of people coming to you with the intent that you would put them on. The unfortunate thing about what I've done and what we've built is that we use a lot of language like son, daughter, all of that stuff. And I'm not going to even begin to go into that because I'm also going to talk to you about my challenges and experiences with that. And so a lot of people started coming in with those terminologies with other intent. And the blessed curse that every pastor has is that they are hard and they are deep lovers. I have often felt punished by my capacity to love. And it is something that God gives every shepherd to do. So I don't consider myself a pastor necessarily by office. And to be very transparent with you, I don't intend to do it long term. These are not long-term goals for me. But it is an assignment I think the Lord gave me to give me the right heart for what he wants me to do. And when you are a deep lover, you experience just a whole lot of stuff. By personality, I am very brute. I am abrasive. And sometimes it's rough. My wife will tell you, my kids will tell you, I'm a hard guy to deal with. And I know that, and it's probably going to always be that way. And some of those personality traits and skills are there to handle the rigors of what the Lord has put me up against and what the Lord has called me to do. But there are people who are jarred by the fact that I am direct and that I am abrasive at times, and they just don't like that. So that is all of that. So these are the things that I have handled. Yes, I'm a lot like Papa. These are the things that I have handled on my back. And the things that you go through. So your pastor is going to go through the following types of scenarios. The first thing that I want to talk about is how you can't control the narrative. And what I mean by that is that when somebody has a complaint or somebody has a version of a story, pastors are victim of the 50% rule. And so you can never really control the narrative of what really happened in a case or in a circumstance. And we are the types of people who preach to you in person, pray for you in person, prophesy to you in person if your pastor is prophetic, pay you in person to be the recipient of text messages that you're gone and you're leaving, and that's it. Every situation is really different, but you have to think about it is forbidden for us to ever share our version or perspective or sides of a story, because to do so would seem deplorable. It would seem inhumane, and it would seem abuse. But we have to endure, and with my movement, because of how influential it is, a lot of people give us the common courtesy of just implying things about us. But there are others who by name, flagrantly, have flyers. And I just honestly, even with as abrasive as I am and with as harsh as I can be, I can't imagine ever rousing the punkish courage to create flyers with another preacher's name on it, to talk about them or to try to borrow some influence from them by saying things about them. I would never and will never do that. But that is a lot to handle, and that is a lot to live under. You have to also live under the constant knowledge that there are people who want you to fail and want you to fall. And I'm a very thick-skinned person, but a lot of pastors are not as thick-skinned as me. Luckily, I was raised by ghetto people and by literal military people, because it taught me very early to be tough. And I have to relearn that at every level, but it's a lot for a pastor to walk around with a constant knowledge that there are conversations and meetings and people who they anticipate your demise. They want you. I received last year a video recording of a gentleman who did not know he was being recorded, and talk about how he would pay. The quote was, "I'll pay any amount of money to see all nations and Matthew Stevenson fall." He's a pastor, got some revelation, and didn't know that something had been forwarded to me with his voice on it saying, I'll pay any amount of money to see them go down. I mean, just crazy stuff. So it's one thing to not let that impact you, and it's another thing to walk with a knowledge of that and try your best to hold yourself and hold your character. So the narratives, pastors don't ever really get the opportunity to be upfront with their version. So what happens is if people become disgruntled, or people leave, or people get hurt or have an experience, then the pastor has to live in and against 50% of the story. In our culture, in church culture, what happens is that pastors have to walk in that 50%. And they have to walk in that 50% because if a pastor does that and says somebody's name or somebody's church name by brand, it looks like the pastor is being immature and an untrustworthy shepherd, because of course people confide things into you and people trust you with information. And so if you ever go public with that stuff, you're a monster. So we almost have to walk with the 50% and just embrace the accusations and just embrace the darts and all of that stuff. And there are people, for every pastor, particularly pastors that are successful, who have to endure the tabloids, Christian gossip columns. And in my personal opinion, I think it's deplorable, detestable that such a thing even exists. But we have to endure all of that and not respond, because if you respond, you bring weight and you bring momentum to people who are trying to borrow the brand. So yeah, those are some of the complexities of what that does. I've also, and this is, if your pastor, and please hear my heart, I'm saying this humbly, if your pastor, if they are attractive or if they are not attractive, I have had to get several restraining orders. So over the last 2 years, I've had real life provable, not like sidebar, but stalkers. So women that have changed their name and said that they are the real Camila Stevenson. There was a season where me and two of the apostles I ordained had cats murdered. There was somebody who slit the throat of a cat. When you go into influence, you start to realize the insanity and the real level of mental anguish that's out there. I don't think people who lead smaller works get to know this, but the more your name goes around and all of that stuff, you start to come into one-on-one real like mental stuff in people. And 1 week on a Thursday, there was a cat with their throat slit on my office door. And then my daughter in Baltimore, my son in Virginia had the same exact thing happen in 7 days. So you had to deal with the stalking, the crazy pressing into infatuation with you. So it's weird because there are people who are infatuated with you and don't know how to handle it. So they talk about you, they demean you, they criticize you, and then the other ones pursue you in another way. So you had to do that. You also have to deal with one of the challenges of influence, and some of my other pastor friends talk about this often. You also have to deal with denominational meetings about you. I have been the subject of several boardroom discussions where reports have been emailed to me about the judgments and the statements of whole councils of bishops that considers me and or my movement a threat and something that should be avoided and prayed against and all of that stuff. So that's in addition to like being called by name in pulpits and all of that type of deal. You also have to deal with rival preachers, which I don't believe that should be such a thing. You have to deal with flyers and people who develop entire teaching series against what you're teaching. So because there's a lot of, I guess, internet traffic and all of that stuff around what you do, you have to deal with people who develop entire teaching series against what you're teaching. You have to also deal with protecting your wives. And this is if your pastor is a married man or woman, but you have to deal with protecting your spouses from the vicious relational complexities and the vipers of people who want to get close with them to use them or for the endorsement or any of that stuff. You also have to deal with the bro code. Now, part of what the bro code is I think every pastor needs friends. Thank God I have some pastors, not very many that I trust, that I talk to. But you also have to deal with the green room syndrome, where if you are a pastor who meets another pastor and they decide that they want to connect and you don't respond how they want, they now, because you would not bro them back, they now have to develop a barrage of accusations and barrage of stuff against you because of the assumption that because we both have the same career, we're supposed to be able to be friends. And I believe pastors should be able to have pastoral friends, but it's nothing that's written in law that because we're pastors, we're going to be friends. And, you know, when God gives you influence, you have to protect it. So you're going to have some assignments. You're going to have that. And that's people that you're supposed to minister to. I have Nathan-like relationships with people. But then you also have people who get upset that you don't connect with them. And so now the basis of their relationships with other people is the mutual fact that they don't like you. So they're whole people who are only friends because they don't like me. That's the whole basis of their connection. That is that. One of the more painful things, as I've said before, I was raised hard. I was groomed hard. So I don't hurt often and I don't hurt easy. But one of the things that really hits me is how to prepare my children for the fact that they will never live normal lives. So your pastors have children. I have 3. 2 of them I didn't. 2 of the I've taken into that I raised. But you have to prepare your children as they go to school on what to expect when they Google you. So you have kids that are in elementary school who have to use YouTube and have to use Google to do schoolwork. And you have to help them know what to expect when they Google you. And you have to explain to your son with as best way as possible while keeping his view of God the right way and his admiration of his father the right way. So in my scenario, my kids and I all have very unique relationships, but to my boy, I am his world. And he by hobby, I mean, one of the things he does is pulls up videos, watches me. He feels like he's called to preach, but he said he's going to do it when he's 16. So he makes it a hobby of watching me. So imagine having to explain to him how God is, keep his admiration of his father intact, but then also explain why some mentally deranged preacher would be calling you a fag on a video broadcast with several dozen pictures of you and your church because he doesn't like the way you dress. I am flashy. That probably won't change. My father was flashy. My mother was flashy. I like clothes. I like nice stuff. You probably ain't gonna ever like how I dress, and that's fine. I don't need you to. You ain't got to like my clothes or the fact that I don't have the same doctrine as you do about tattoos. What I find is that most people, even preachers, don't read the Bible and the right way. And so I don't have the same doctrine as many of you on stuff like that. But to explain to your son what a faggot is, and why somebody would be saying that before or after your name is excruciating. The words themselves didn't pierce me. It was having to explain to my son why he should not use that word and why other people should never use that word. Then explaining to your 5-year-old what a drama queen is, because they run into videos of people saying that your lights and your stages and your, what they call it, props, is deceptive and that you're nothing but a drama queen. The truth is that me, like most pastors, I ain't want all this attention. I'm doing what God called me to do, but I cannot stand not being able to go places without sunglasses, and I wasn't anticipating this. And in my opinion, All Nations is still relatively small, so I get nothing out of all of that stuff. But that impacted me. Every pastor has to go through preparing their children for the lives they're going to live, because they almost lose the right to be children when they become PKs. So that's it. You have to also deal with the fact that as a pastor, you are expected to allow people to use you. And if you start to put boundaries around it or say no, then the stigma is that you have favorites and favoritism. And the truth is, everybody has favorite everythings. And I've got favorite stuff, you got favorite stuff. But in a pastoral context, if you refuse to allow people to say no, you are ungodly or unchristlike and all of that stuff. So you have to deal with that. You have to deal with the fact that there are people that you've taught, that you've groomed, that you grow, that you ordain, that you love, that you help out of crisis, that all that stuff, that if they taste any success, musical success, preaching success, business or career success, you have to handle the fact that there are people around you that are submitted up until they become successful. So you have to deal with the fact that there are people that you love, that you've trained, that you've talked to or preached to or all of that stuff, who don't have the emotional maturity or the spiritual maturity to be successful and stay submitted. That they think that their success, and I do that, justifies the absence of their submission. And so you have to deal with that, because at that point, if you correct them, if you remove their whatever, then you're being jealous and you're being Saul and all of that stuff. So you have to walk through your elders, your leaders, your sons, your daughters who get a promotion at work and can no longer be submitted, or get a husband or a wife and can no longer be submitted. It's a tough thing to go through, because through all of this, you still have to love people. I have physically broken fights up. Physically broken fights up. I have physically pulled people from clubs. Physically. I have received prophetic words of knowledge about where my disciples were and that I should go and get them. Camila is not that way. You're going to have to come to her. But if I get so stirred, or if I get whatever, I'll go get you. I have paid mortgages, and the Lord has blessed me to do so. I've been thrown up on. So I'm not talking about like in a deliverance sense. I'm talking about in a very real I'm hungover, Dad, can you come get me? And me getting up out of my bed to go get people and folk throwing up on me. And that's, I love it. I love the people I'm called to. Some of this stuff I still do. Some of that stuff I don't have the time to do. So you're not about to be vomiting on me on purpose. Here is another very major problem with what we do. This is the worst part. You go from being mom and dad to the devil in a matter of days. People who don't know me and are not a part of our church think that I am the guy whose objective is to go out and recruit sons. And any of the 2,000 people on here right now that really know me, that have gotten coffee with me, or who's been to my home, they will all tell you I cannot stand that conversation. I hate it from the bottom of my heart. I don't like it. It has been the most excruciating source of my ministry pain. I have not been perfect. There were moments when there were moments when I probably should have been a general, a military commander. But my father heart got in the way. And there were moments when I should have been a father, and my general heart got in the way. So learning the balance of that is a challenge, but you go from I have never walked up to anybody and said, "Oh, you my son," or "You my daughter," ever, not in my life. If people have grown a relationship with me in that way over the years, then I respond. And if that is really what that relationship is, I let it develop. But nobody can ever provably say to you that I walked up to them and said, "Hey, I'm your spiritual father. I'm your spiritual daddy." I will not do it. People call me whatever they want to, but if I were to ever really publish the memoirs of who I see that way, a lot of people would be very, very, very shocked. People know I don't do that. And the reason I don't do that is because it is excruciating. And I don't know that people mean that. When people say I'm a son or I want to be father, most times what they mean is I want to be discovered, I want to be put on, and I want a platform. So for that reason alone, I stay away from that subject matter. If I'm being honest, there are people that I know I should have had that relationship with, and they just didn't last through the initial vettings of that. And the relationships go weird. But even when I know it, I'm not the one to give that definition. People think that about me because so many people refer to me in that way, but it is not something that I do. That stuff is crazy because depending upon what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with, they start calling a relationship that over some years, then you start to love them in that way and talk to them in that way and interact with them in that way. And so if you have to deal with the narcissism of a son or a member who also feels like they are called to ministry, and so they can't even hear your wisdom or your counsel or your example, because everything they're looking to hear from you is when it's going to be my turn, or when you're going to ordain me, or when you're going to plant me. You have to deal with the narcissism of a said son or daughter, who can only think about what they want out of you. And you also have to deal with those that type things and say things and forget that you literally wiped and washed their tears and gave them money and all of that crap. So it is challenging. Your pastor has to manage his or her life, his or her money, his or her future, his or her profession. And traditional pastoring is over. This is a part of why I had to develop a construct for my pastors, the ones that I oversee, because traditional pastoring is done. We no longer have the option of being a pastor and not being a professional. For the sake of the future, many pastors don't have intention. I know I don't. If it's up to me, I'm not, no. Round about 45, we're going to start having a conversation about me moving on with my life. But so those options are gone. So we have to manage the pressures of business, the pressures of ministry, the pressures of keeping your heart right towards God's people. It is a fact that there are very few times. And I'm not saying this for sympathy. I'm saying this because I'm trying to free another pastor. I think I may have been apologized to in 14 years twice. I really believe twice. And people, I don't own people. People have the right to come. They have the right to go. But the level of dishonor we have to live under is unbelievable. And the average person doesn't have what it takes to live in that and to live under that. I really believe it's been, I'll be generous and say, I think I've been apologized to maybe 3 times, period. People don't tell pastors they're sorry. We're expected to, and there are moments when we should, but people do not say to pastors that they are sorry. And the adverse of that is this: pastors often feel guilty about having to admit that they are hurting and hurt by something you did. It is too human. It is too vulnerable. It is too much. There's a couple of people in my life, and I probably need to do it before I go on sabbatical just to make sure my heart is clear. But there's a couple of people in my life that I should have admit that hurt very directly in a conversation, and I didn't. I soldiered it out and walked it through. But I try to do a good job long term of going back to adjust something if I think it's worth it or redemptive. But yeah, that there are people in my experience, this may not be yours, that had reached out to me for life help of every race, African Americans and Black Caucasians, that reached out to me for help. My marriage is a mess. My ministry is a mess. My wife, one guy wrote me, my wife likes women. You're the only person I trust. I can't trust nobody in my region. Please help me. I feel led to you. And then in a matter of months, because I don't respond to anything, that is my rule. So no DMs, no emails. I don't do that because I have to protect. You're not going to incriminate me by saying I did anything. And in weeks, the same people that would reach out to me or email me their emergencies were publicly, like by name, trying to defame me and discredit me. Everything in my flesh, this was year before last, everything in my flesh wanted to post, email, blast the emails. Like, didn't you just... Wasn't I the same guy that you thought was wise enough to walk you through this and to entrust with these secrets? And now you're joining got it. That's how that works. That's just how it goes, man. It's the game. So I very often have my heart break for pastors. I have never made a suicidal attempt. To the glory of God, I will never make a suicidal attempt because I cannot fathom the situation that would put my children in. And I would never want the eternal torment of leaving my wife with the responsibility of raising my children without me. I am in love with my kids and my wife, and I would never want that guilt. But this is a real thing. I tell people all the time, whether I consider them sons or daughters or disciples, if you have the option to, and if you can choose, please don't do this. Do not do this. Don't do this. If this is something that you are doing because you need your bills paid, or because you need extra money, or you're tired of corporate America, please don't do this. Don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to your children. Don't do this to your nothing. Don't do it. Only a fool would call themselves to something like this. And many people, I did. We all do. We go into this naive. You know, many of you are just learning about me or just hearing about me. But this thing is, I've been doing this for 14 years now. And going into it, I was naive in the mud, just completely naive. I had no clue. When I got ordained initially by my grandfather, it was like, here's a certificate. Good luck, you know. So a lot of this stuff I had to learn and I had to experience and had to do. So it's important, you know, pastors don't often look forward to being a part of orgies or being secret drug addicts or alcoholics or losing their marriages or any of that stuff. But you have to be fair. It is important to realize that we live an unfair life. You know, your president is responsible for the laws, and they are responsible for the budgets of the nation. They have no bearing on your soul. Your leader, your pastor, is an overseer of your soul. They make report for your soul. Please treat them well. I don't know if one of my pastors had his former pastor, I think it was last week, who was 70 years old. Please listen to me. Please listen to me. A 70-year-old man shot himself. And the thought of why a 70-year-old pastor, what type of heart space, what type of mental space he had to be into to shoot himself is beyond me. So I don't want to talk about this. I only have to meet with my pastors because I start sending out random text messages to pastors I'm in relationship with and pastors that I oversee to check on them to see if they're okay. And the feedback I got was heartbreaking. I made them be honest with me. And so I said, okay, if this is happening with y'all, I feel like it is an irresponsible use of my influence to not say something. So I'm meeting with them and going to train them through pragmatic things like that. But I just want to let you know that this is not a Disneyland. It looks pretty, but you don't want this. I love it, and I'm not quitting no time soon. But you can't handle the attacks. You can't handle the criticism. You can't handle the tabloids. You can't handle the disgruntled people who never say they're sorry or repent. You just can't handle that. Everybody's a victim when they leave a church. And the sad thing on a pastor's perspective is that people will get victories and breakthroughs, and they'll get confirmations and affirmations, and they'll get gifts and all of that stuff. And then we'll have a bad week at your church. And when they leave, the only narrative they're going to give is what's happening in that week. They're never going to tell you about all of the full perspective. They're going to leave in the victimization. And the way our culture is whoever makes the complaint first has the most credibility. So I was in a green room a couple of weeks ago, getting ready to speak. It was my wife and I, and maybe two other leaders, two other preachers, very intimate setting. And there was a leader who walked in, and this is a leader I used to pastor. They made the decision to move on and find something more fitting for them, but I used to pastor them. The leader walked in and looked at me, in my face, and my wife, Said nothing. Not hi, not hello, not even, excuse me, nothing. The room had to be maybe the size of my dining room. There was no mistake. It was the most awkward, dishonorable thing. So it's hard out here. You have to be disrespected. You have to be dishonored. You have to be betrayed. You have to be abandoned, and you have to keep your deportment. You have to maintain your posture, because any sign of anything, they're going to get you. And if you have influence, it's going to be worse. This is the plight of pastoring and what we deal with. I love it. I'm not going to quit it. And I'm going to always do what I need to do to take care of myself. But please take care of your leaders and do your best, like what the book of Hebrews says, to make what they do easy. The Bible says to honor them, because if you make their jobs hard, it won't be well with you. So honor them. Do your best to serve them. Do your best to revere them. If you're under an abusive leader or a leader you don't trust, or, well, that's the other thing. Pastors have to do the dance of loving people that they cannot trust for whatever reason. If it is a maturity issue on the side of the pastor or the congregant, or if it's a break, you have to love people that you don't trust. That's a lot. And you got to learn it. My complexity, a lot of this I know up here, my complexity is that it changes at every level of influence. It changes. You have to learn it over again. The rules are never the same. So I'm a pretty bottom line person. So I tell my church all the time, pray for me. You ain't gonna ever have to worry about seeing me stripping or none of that stuff, but just pray, because my number one challenge as a pastor is keeping my heart right towards God's people and towards what God has called me to do. I would prophesy all day, every day. I could sit on this Periscope and give you all 1,700 of you a prophetic word. And more than likely, it's going to be accurate. However, this pastor and stuff, I humbly anticipate retirement. So I'm not going nowhere. You ain't got to go have no prayer groups and no concern meetings and all that stuff. I have no problem with recognizing when I'm tired. And I don't hide it. I tell my church all the time that you're not going to kill me. So yes. And if you opt to be unfaithful, disloyal, inconsistent in my absence, that is between you and God. And I'll deal with you when I'm back. But you're not going to kill me. I'm leaving pretty soon. Not yet. But and I'm going to get the mental space for vision. So that is why I'm meeting with my church, my pastor, campuses, and all of that, is because if your mental and your heart space is too clogged up, then you're not going to have room for vision. Finally, my brethren, if you are out there and if you are going to use this video to further the gas line of attacks toward me, I love you. I forgive you. If you feel like I mishandled you for whatever the reasons are, or whatever, or did something to break you, then forgive me. Release me from what you believe I did. I don't know every situation, case by case, and what you feel and why. But if you're out there and you feel like, you know, you are irreparable and unmovable because of something I did not or would not or could not do, release me from it. Forgive me. Don't let that keep you in a space and in a place of carnality, because it is carnal to walk in unforgiveness, and it is carnal to hate somebody. So forgive me, release me. If you are out there and you belong under my leadership and under my supervision, but you will not because you are offended or you are too embarrassed to have the discussion or the conversation about how to come back, hit me up. I will take everybody that belongs to me. So if you're out there and you want to come home, you can do it. Let's have a conversation. So I just want to put all that out there. I love y'all. I'm not going to die of cancer, a nervous breakdown, suicidal depression, because I can't handle. So yeah, I'm not going to be sick. You gotta like my personality. There's some stuff about my personality I don't like, but whatever. Don't let that impair purpose. Move forward. All right. I love you guys. This took a lot of bravery for me. It was uncomfortable as crap. But I got some work to do today with my pastors and those that are under my spiritual supervision. I love you. I bid you peace in the name of Jesus. And yeah, keep me in your prayers. But this is that. If you are a leader watching me, a pastor watching me, and you're having suicidal thoughts, or you are in a space of depression, or you're not managing a hard season well, please talk. Force yourself to vent. Please, if you don't have a bishop, an apostle, or an overseer or any of that, call somebody. Please get it out, right or wrong. Get it all out your system and then let them correct you later. But force yourself to vent, please. If you are out there and you are burnt out, if you're trying to, over the last 5 years, I think I've absorbed maybe 4 to 5 pastors and their congregations. If you don't want to do this anymore, if you hate your job, if you despise getting up in the pulpit, if a break does not handle that, a vacation doesn't handle that, if it's a impact to your marriage, shut it down. Shut it down. Do not go down with something that did not work. Close it down. Humble yourself. Go join a bigger thing. If I'm not your speed, turn a channel. Go to another thing that fits you. But don't keep trying to push something that's killing you and draining you and not working. Don't do that. My heart breaks for pastors that are out there trying to push a vision, going financially bankrupt, emotionally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt. Shut it down. Go join something else, please. Father, in the name of Jesus, I bless you for pastors. I thank you for leaders watching me right now in the name of Jesus. I thank you for them. I thank you for those that follow them. And I praise you, Lord, that your purpose for them will not be thwarted. May a sensitivity be recaptured by all of them concerning who you've called them to be and what you've called them to do. I'm asking that you would reveal to them the power of rest, the power of rest. Give them a revelation of rest. Help them to know what that looks like, how to do that thoroughly, and what to do in seasons of momentum and in seasons of want, in seasons of strong aggression and in seasons where they're lacking. Make them stable. I pray, Lord, that you would anoint even some courageous conversations. Lord, give them the boldness and give them the courage to have courageous conversations with people that have hurt them, with people that they've hurt, and help reconciliation to come where it's necessary. If it is not necessary, then deliver them from the power of their accusers and their abusers, and help them to see that this life is still worth living and that this career is one that is rewarding even though it's difficult. So do I bless you for victory in the lives of these leaders. And I thank you that the spirit of death will not lay claim to them. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. I don't know if I'm ever coming back on Periscope again, but yeah, I love y'all. Peace out.